All right, man, we are cruising right along. Step number 6, design a gripping opening. All right, and here's what I added a P to that because I did have it as design a griping opening, and that was really bad. So how do most people begin their talks, right? Like every student talk you've ever heard starts like this, right? Hello, my name is John, and I'm going to be talking to you today about GMOs. Wow, like everybody's hyped for that, right? No, nobody's hyped for that. Nobody cares what your name is. Sorry. Okay, I just need to get that out there. So here's what I mean. All right. So if we think about how the opening of your speech should go, remember how I told you back when we thought about objectives and we thought about a title and we thought about the purpose? What was the thing that I told you, right? The thing was that I told you was if you can get past your own ability to like your own like inwardly focused, I've got to get this information out of my head, and think about what the audience is interested in and what the audience wants to hear, because they're of course the people that are going to judge you as to whether or not you did well on your talk. Then it really shifts the thing. If you just in life, if you can get over like not thinking about yourself first and think about everybody else. So what I mean by that with the opening is we want to capture their interest with what we call the interest approach, right? So rather than the first thing that they hear being your name and maybe where you're from and some awkward banter about how, the interstate was busy on the way here, the first thing that they hear is what is the most important thing to them about your talk, all right? And I don't know what that is because I don't know what your talk is, but when you think through the information that you want to share with them, think about like what is the most gripping thing, like what is the most salient to their lives, like what's going to surprise them. And then you start with that, all right? And so maybe it's just, if you're talking about GMOs or the dangers of GMOs, of which there probably aren't any, or you're talking about, like we've had people do even, I'm really bad at coming up with examples off the top of my head. We've had some people talk about like the proper place settings for Thanksgiving, and they started off with, "Do you want your mother-in-law to not judge you? Well, we're going to tell you how to, leave here knowing how to set up plates properly so that, she'll love you and her son." And so, and like, that's way more interesting. I mean, I didn't do a very good job, but that's way more interesting than like, "Hi, my name's Delilah, and I'm going to tell you how to set a place setting," right? So we start like with what is the most important thing. And then you introduce yourself almost as an aside, like, "Hi, my name's Adam, and I'm glad to be here today." And then you move into stating the purpose, objectives, or overview of the talk, right? So it could be, by the end of the day, we're going to leave here knowing, how to set a 12-piece setting, or, you're going to be able to describe the pluses and minuses of genetic modification. So, and then it's also, and this is like advanced level stuff, if you can set yourself up to come back to this opening at the close, then it provides some like really neat closure. So again, just in review, think about the thing that's going to be of interest to them first and lead with that, and then your name, okay? So what about jokes? People are like, "What about jokes? Should I tell jokes?" And my answer is only if you're funny, because that's true. So like if you're not funny, don't tell jokes. There's no shame in that. What about apologies, right? Like we've all seen this happen. Like people come in, they're like, "Oh man, sorry that the projector did not work. Sorry that this microphone is funny. I'm sorry that I'm running a little late." Nobody cares. Just get on with your talk, all right? Unless you're like really late or something. But again, don't spend a lot of time on this because people generally, they're not judging you personally. Like they just want to hear the information that you have to give. So what about starting on time? Yes, start on time. The answer to that is always start on time because it's a waste of people. Like sometimes like people are like, "Should we wait for more?" No, just generally start on time because those people that are late, that's their problem. All right. And then step number 7, finally, at the very end here, create a memorable close. How should you close the presentation? All right. So there are a couple ways, and a bit of it depends on what type of talk you are doing. Okay. So if you're an informative talk, we want to think about what do you want the audience to remember, okay? So our goal is like retention of information, right? If we're trying to inform them about stuff, obviously it does no good if they forget it. So what is the best way to close to help them remember stuff, all right? And then if you're a persuasive talk, you want them to do something or to feel something or to, preferably to like, get out and do something. And so they don't necessarily need them to remember. You just want them to do a thing. Okay. And so those are two different types of endings. And so the persuasive one corresponds to the call to action, right? So like it's not even a persuasive speech unless it has a call to action. So if you've given this big speech about like horse slaughter and why we should have it or shouldn't have it or whatever, you may end with, and that's why you need to contact your congressman or write the USDA or whatever it is. And so you leave them with a job to do, because otherwise, what's the point of bringing them around to your talk if they don't do anything about it, right? So if you want them to remember stuff, if you want them to just like come away, like then you just want to review, okay? And so like what's the most important information? And so it may be a slide with, all right, remember the 5 steps to averting nuclear holocaust are, like shut off the control valve, whatever they are. And then you kind of go over them and just a quick review at the end. And then that helps everybody sort of understand that we're closing and ending and the things that they need to walk away with. And then we're done. And then like if you're given an emotional like motivational speech, like you may leave them with a challenge, which is very similar to call to action, but like maybe it's instead of them doing something and maybe it's more personal. We don't really do that a lot in this class. So generally a call to action or review will work. Okay. Should it match the opening? Yes. If you can find a way to tie it in with the opening, then it gives this really neat sense of closure and you will be a champion. So step 8, I guess we're not done yet. Build in interaction. This is a thing that people never do, right? Like how many of you think, man, I should really do activities in my talk? Maybe you do. Maybe you, most people think like, oh man, I should really just give some information. But what we found through science is that if people can interact with you, they're gonna like you better and they're gonna be more engaged in your talk. So here's a graph of like interest over time, okay? And you can see that at the beginning here, like we've got a moderate level of interest, right? If you started with your name, like, hi, my name's Delilah, you're going to drop in way down here real quick, right? Because nobody cares about your name except your mom, and she already knows your name. Anyhow, so if you start here and we get like 2 minutes in, 5 minutes in, people start to wane, right? Like without any kind of interaction. Like they just, they get bored. Like maybe you're not that great of a speaker. Maybe they don't really have that great of interest in the topic. But if it like about this 3 to 5 minute mark, if you build in some interaction, like we've covered some stuff, we've got some context, we understand why we're here, and now we're gonna have like a small group activity, or maybe we're just gonna have a discussion, or maybe you can pose a question for them to think about, or maybe there's a quiz, or maybe if it's your training demo, this is the point at which you actually allow them to try to do the thing that you just showed them how to do. And then you can see that the interaction actually goes up, or the interest goes up rather. Because, anytime that you were sitting in class, imagine sitting in lecture for like 50 minutes and you're like bored out of your mind. But if there's ever a chance to turn to your neighbor and do something or like do the clicker thing, like all of a sudden like you're engaged again. So, all right. So anyway, so just know how. So how do we build interaction? Like / participation? Like what are some good ways? You can always do question and answer. This is a real simple one, right? Like it doesn't really require any setup or props or anything. You can have them, turn to a buddy and answer. You can just call on people. It seems really simple, but it actually, keeps people's, attention because like they pose a question and then they're like, what's that guy gonna say? So anyway, you could have group discussion. You could be like, all right, turn and, discuss with small groups of 4 or whatever, about like, I'm going to pose this thing to you and then we're going to come back and share as a group. That's a thing you could do. You could have an actual activity like where they have to do like a trust fall. I don't know that that's appropriate, but something along those lines. You could have quizzes. People love to give quizzes in this class. It's really weird. I think it's kind of, they're like, I'm the teacher now. And then they make everybody do quizzes. You do this method called jigsaw, which is like kind of more advanced. It's like where you give, if say there's 5 groups in the class and you give each group a piece of the puzzle, see where the metaphor comes in, and then they have to like sort of study it and present it back to the group. And then we put it all together. That's probably not appropriate because it takes too long, but just know that's a thing you can do if you ever have to give like a 45-minute talk. Think, pair, share is one of the ones that your teacher probably uses all the time. And basically its purpose is if you just like give her, talking, and then you call on Joe Blow and you're like, Joe Blow, what do you think about this? And Joe Blow's like, and then he doesn't have a very good information or answer. The way to prevent that is to do think, pair, share, right? So it's like you pose the question, you give them like a minute to think about it. You then have them pair with a buddy and then share like what they thought about with the buddy. And then they have a chance to sort of articulate it and talk it about and hear what somebody thinks of it. And then you call on Joe Blow and Joe Blow is primed to give you a really good answer. because he stole it from his partner. Anyhow, so step number 9, when we're all done sort of putting together your talk and you built in some interaction and all this good stuff, is to create notes, okay? I guess I don't create notes. So here's some tips for creating notes. Do not print them out on a sheet of paper. This is a thing that I've seen people do, and they're there, and this is my sound effects, like I'm running a radio show, and they're like doing this, and they're folding it, and it's really annoying, and we're like, it's obscuring their face when they're trying to give the no. Note cards are note cards for a reason, and you can put them in your hand, and you don't see them. So if it makes you feel more comfortable to have them, by all means do them and practice with them. But you can also put stuff up on the PowerPoint, and that helps too. But if you're gonna do note cards, keep them actual note cards. They're literally like 50 cents for a 100 pack. So, and then step 10, of course, practice. 90% of all success is in the preparation. That's why I say that people that are terrified to do speeches didn't generally do better, because they put in a lot of work to prevent doing poorly, versus people that are like, I'm going to wing it because I'm awesome. And then they show up and they lose a lot of points because their speech isn't organized. So it's good to practice at the same location if you can actually do that, like get into the same place where you're gonna have to give your speech at the same time of day. You always want to practice with your movements and gestures. Just do it exactly as if you were doing it for real, right? Don't don't ride in your car and give it. Like, you want to do the talk in as close to a real of a situation as you can. Practice with your visuals. This is really important in your training demo where you're teaching them like how to do something, and you've got props and you're like perhaps like building a catapult. So you want to like actually like do it with the thing. That way you're not putting it together for the first time in front of us, and it's really awkward for us. You can record yourself if possible. If you got a camera and you want to watch yourself, or probably the best thing to do is to rope your roommates into watching you, and you can practice with them. And that actually flushes out a lot of the awkwardness, some things that you maybe didn't realize were going to go wrong, or were going to take longer, or maybe that people just weren't going to get because you thought it made perfect sense, but it didn't for them. So rope your roommates into it. So again, remember, because this is an informational, we're going to stop with the review of the steps. And so remember, the first step is always to analyze your audience, what's their come from, where they at, and then you establish your purpose by writing objectives. You create a winning title that doesn't suck. You organize your body/content of your speech according to your objectives. Remember, taking out things that don't have any bearing and only including things that do. You're going to develop a plan for delivery of visuals. So like, what kinds are you going to use? What things do you need to think about? You're going to design a really good opening that isn't your name. Okay. And you're going to create a good closing that hopefully has like a nice bookend and either has a call to action or a review. And then finally, you're going to build in interaction and participation, create notes, and practice. Hey, great. Good job. You made it to the end of this number 3. In the next talk, we actually get into talking about the training demo, which is the first speech that you'll give, and all the steps that go into planning for it, and like kind of what we expect of you, and kind of walk you through it step by step. And then when you go to lab this week, you're going to get to do some brainstorming about that and thinking about it and get some help on it. And then I think in the 3rd week, we actually have like a lab work day where you can just come with your plan and get lots of good feedback and share it with a buddy and share it with your TA, et cetera, et cetera. Hey, thanks for listening. Like you had a choice. Just kidding. I'm not actually, I'm really a really nice guy.